The Ackland Art Museum at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is home to a very distinguished collection of Asian art, numbering almost 3,000 works of art. About 2/3 of that total are Japanese, covering the span from Neolithic pottery to contemporary photography. My name is Lily Rodriguez, the Ackland's Learning Resources Coordinator, and I'm delighted to introduce this video presentation of one of those works. Among the Japanese paintings is a fascinating early 19th century illustrated handscroll depicting an extensive crowd of people from all walks of life viewing cherry blossoms in a specific area of the city that is now Tokyo, followed by a lengthy handwritten text. With overall dimensions of over 28 feet long and about 1 foot tall, the handscroll is designed to be viewed and studied one short section at a time, from right to left, with one hand unrolling the painting, the other rolling it up. Our presentation in this video pans across the entire scroll, with commentary on selected scenes by students in the university's Japanese History Lab, a student group led by Professor Morgan Pitelka, who contributes some thoughts about the extensive text that concludes the scroll.
This video is a collaboration between the Ackland Art Museum and the UNC Japanese History Lab, created to explain some of the historical background behind a 19th century Japanese handscroll from the Ackland's collection. I'm Jack Snyder, and I look forward to walking through some of this scroll, which is both a rich piece of visual art and an interesting source for learning about early modern Japanese history. The scroll was made in the early 19th century by Fujiwara Hidenori and Fujiwara Nobuyoshi, placing it in the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1867 and is named for the largest city in Japan at the time, which we now know as Tokyo. It depicts a large group of people outside celebrating the springtime blooming of the cherry blossoms while walking along a road towards Mokuboji, a Buddhist temple in Edo. In Japanese culture, cherry blossoms have long signified the arrival of spring, as well as the beauty and ephemerality of life. Since the Nara period, cherry blossom viewing parties have been popular as opportunities to eat, drink, and even dance beneath the falling blossoms to mark the changing seasons. The scroll is about 1 foot tall and over 28 feet long, and it depicts many people who come from all sorts of backgrounds in Edo society. This video will zoom in and focus on a few interesting and instructive scenes from the scroll, as well as translating some of the various signs and inscriptions we find along the way. Let's take a look. First, towards the right edge of the artwork, there's a palanquin surrounded by a number of men and women, with some of the men carrying the palanquin. This device for transporting a high-ranking person is a clear visual embodiment of the early modern social hierarchy. The Edo period was the last period of rule by the samurai, a hereditary class of warriors. The palanquin depicted here surely contains a high-ranking samurai. Particularly high-ranking people being hidden from view, like in this palanquin, was typical in Edo society. An easy way to identify the samurai who are visible in the scroll is by looking for people wearing 2 swords. Only samurai were legally allowed to do this, making it another visible symbol of status. Edo society did not just consist of a hierarchy of classes, but also hierarchies within classes, as evidenced by the fact that only a couple of samurai in this scroll are in palanquins, while many others are walking around, intermingling with townspeople. Moving further down the road, 2 men are depicted merrily reading together as they walk. The Edo period saw a significant boom in literacy and mass-produced printing. Diverse types of written works flourished, from practical work manuals to poetry. According to the text accompanying this scene, these men are peddling folk songbooks, but other popular Edo period genres of writing would have also been at home in a scene like this. Without reference to the text of the scroll, perhaps the smiles of these two men could have indicated that they were enjoying some comic literature. Or maybe the fact that they were reading while walking down the street during a festival would have implied that they were reading travel guides. Continuing to the left, two samurai are shown on horseback. During the Edo period, Japan experienced about 2 centuries without any major military conflict. So in this depiction, warriors on horseback are an element of peacetime society and culture, rather than warfare. Ordinary townspeople could not afford to own horses, so it is another marking of samurai status. In front of the horseback samurai, a few townspeople are tripping over themselves, trying to get out of the way, showing the accommodation that was expected towards samurai from commoners. The appearance of cavalry warriors in a peaceful festival setting embodies the tension between the military tradition and appearance of the samurai, and the reality of the lack of military conflict during the Edo period. There are a few particularly notable people among this crowd further down the road. A man here stands out for wearing eyeglasses and a European-style hat, imported from Dutch traders. From the early Edo period, the state prohibited Japanese people from leaving the country and Europeans from entering, except for a small Dutch trading post in the southern city of Nagasaki. In 1720, the Tokugawa government lifted its ban on Western books, and some Japanese scholars became interested in so-called Dutch studies, based on imported books, especially focused on anatomy, medicine, and astronomy. This man's European-style garb may indicate that he is such a scholar. Just below and to the right of this potential Dutch study scholar are two men embracing. Male-male sexual relationships were common and widely accepted in Edo Japan, and often involved a gap in age and status between partners, although those details are unclear in this depiction. Continuing towards the temple, in one of a number of roadside stands, two women are seated. Their shaved heads indicate that these women are Buddhist nuns. Religion and travel were closely linked in Edo Japan. Commoners were generally prohibited from leaving their villages to travel, but exceptions were often granted for religious pilgrimages, which could involve extended journeys with plenty of stops along the way. Women were able to take Buddhist vows and become nuns, which released them from domestic obligations, offering them a path to more personal freedom. Perhaps these nuns are local to Edo, or perhaps they are from elsewhere and making use of their relative freedom to travel to visit the Cherry Blossom Festival. Stands like the one run by the woman serving tea depicted here are seen all across this scroll, run by enterprising merchants offering things like refreshments and snacks to festival goers. Such stalls were not just in big cities like Edo. They populated towns and roads across Japan to serve pilgrims and other types of travelers. Finally, at the left edge of the artwork, there is a crowd of people just outside the gate of Mokuboji, where the blooming cherry blossoms are especially prominent. Here, the variety of colors in the scroll is particularly striking. Along with the pink, white, and orange of the cherry blossoms, many of the people in the crowd are wearing colorful clothing, holding blue umbrellas, or both. The diversity of ages, social positions, and occupations among the crowd of men and women depicted in the scroll, and its attention to detail in depicting a variety of people, make this work of art a valuable historical source for learning about Japanese society towards the end of the Edo period.
The concluding text that we are seeing now takes up almost half the length of the entire scroll. My name is Morgan Pitelka, and I'd like to offer some comments on this. It would be an exaggeration to say that the entire history of Japanese literature is referenced in the text on this scroll, but not by much. Every stanza contains poem fragments and observations linked to specific works in Japan's long literary history. The scroll is a reminder of the significance of what literary scholars call intertextuality, or the practice of citing other works through quotation, allusion, and parody. The author claims to have written this text in response to a request from his painter acquaintance. Unable to think about what to write about the painting, he falls asleep and is visited in his dream by a boy from the scroll who narrates the scene of diverse visitors to see the cherry blossoms along the Sumida River near Edo, which the author records as the text of the scroll. While the painted portion of the scroll alludes to the rich tradition of Japanese art, showing scenes of daily life in and around cities, as well as the perennial theme of cherry blossoms, the textual portion of the scroll draws on the standard device of being visited in a dream by a spirit or deity, which is found throughout Japanese poetry, prose, and drama. Still the subject of ongoing research, the unified handscroll that results is a perfect expression of the idea of the floating world, ukiyo, the powerful theme in Edo period art that illustrates pleasure-seeking city dwellers from varied backgrounds who are united in their desire to enjoy intense experiences. In this case, the brief but brilliant beauty of cherry blossoms, metaphors for the fragility of human existence.